Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm film scholar and abstract punishment, Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert and that Slayer you've been hearing so much about, Lani and Rich. And we are here today to talk about Bad Eggs, the 12th episode of Season 2.
Bad Eggs first aired on January 12th, 1998, and was written by Marty Noxon and directed by David Greenwalt.
A warning before we begin, every episode of Still Pretty talks about each episode within the greater context of all of Buffy, and as such is fully spoiled. All right, the good news is that they're not amongst the great thinkers of our time, so let's go on patrol. In Bad Eggs, Buffy bumps into a dim-witted vampire named Lyle Gorch at the mall and runs him off, and Joyce complains that Buffy isn't responsible. For a school assignment, all the kids get paired up to care for an egg, pretending it's a baby. But because Buffy wasn't in class and there were an uneven number of kids...
I'm a single mother.
No man of her own.
Do you know what this says about me? That I am doomed to lead my mother's life. How deeply scary is that?
Cordelia and Xander make out in closets. Buffy and Angel make out in graveyards. Lyle and his brother Tector stalk Buffy. At night, a tentacled thing reaches out of the egg and slithers onto Buffy's face, disrupting her sleep. Lyle and Tector Gorch hang out in the sewer, living under the delusion that they can take out the Slayer.
I think you are afraid of the Slayer. All right. I'm gonna beat you like a red-headed stepchild. Throw your ass out in that sunlight. Come on. You think you can? Giddy up, son.
At school, both Buffy and Willow are sluggish, but Xander is fine. When he drops his egg, it doesn't break. Turns out, he boiled it. Buffy and Angel make out in the graveyard again, and when the subject of kids comes up, Angel says he can't have any. Because, you know, vampire.
So you don't think about the future?
No.
Never?
No.
Really don't care what happens a year from now. 5 years from now.
Angel, when I look into the future, all I see is you.
Oh, Buffy. At school, a janitor working the late night shift goes into the basement, finds a huge gaping hole in the wall, and gets pulled through it. At home, Buffy's egg jumps out at her and she stabs it with a pair of scissors. Joyce comes in and yells at her again for being irresponsible and grounds her. At school, Buffy asks everyone about their eggs, with no luck.
So, your egg isn't acting odd or anything?
It isn't acting anything. It's an egg, Buffy. It doesn't emote.
Xander, in search of the perfect snack, decides to eat his hard-boiled child/egg and discovers it's a little baby monster thing. While they do a dissection of Buffy's full-grown egg monster and Xander's hard-boiled egg monster, Willow and Cordelia knock them both out and throw them in a closet, then join all the other mind-controlled kids and teachers in the basement, where they break up the floor, under which is an undulating mama bazaar. Whatever that is. Meanwhile, Joyce goes to visit Giles to complain about kids in general, but what she means specifically is Buffy. You know, the girl who saves the world every week.
Do you have children, Mr. Giles?
No, I haven't any children. Although, sometimes I feel as though I do, working here.
It can be such a... I don't want to say burden, but... actually, I kind of do want to say burden.
Giles, who is mind-controlled, puts a little egg monster on Joyce, and she becomes mind-controlled as well. They go down to the basement for some refreshing manual labor, collecting baby eggs from the Mama Bazaar. Buffy and Xander wake up in a closet and go down to the basement to save everyone. They attack. Then Lyle and Tector show up and attack. The mama bezoar eats Tector. Buffy jumps into the cracked floor and kills the mama. Everyone faints. Buffy pulls herself back out of the ground, covered in black bezoar goo. Lyle runs away.
All right. It's over.
Giles convinces everyone it was a gas leak. Joyce grounds Buffy even more, saying she can't leave her room. Buffy lives to the letter of that law, making out with Angel from her bedroom window.
I'm not breaking any rules.
Buffy, are you going to bed?
In a minute.
All right, so Noelle, it's bad eggs.
It's such a bummer of an episode on so many levels. Like, many.
As I'm watching it, I'm just thinking, I don't have a lot to say about it, because it's not like one of the truly terrible episodes of Buffy, but it's not good either.
No. I mean, I was looking for some sort of deeper meaning or metaphor or major theme, and there's just nothing. I mean, there's a kind of aliens face hugger monster thing going on with the contents of the eggs, which look so conveniently like chicken eggs. I mean, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great?
I mean, I guess that's how you get by as a big mama that has to live underneath the cement in a basement. I mean, that's probably they've evolved that way because the eggs look like chicken eggs, so it's much easier to get out and take people over for whatever it is that purpose is. But
what is it doing? And if they were doing aliens, like if they were doing something aliens like that was super political about welfare mothers and the feminization of poverty, like I would be here for this, but I don't think that's what they're doing.
I'm not sure they're doing anything.
No.
It's just there's no subtext, it's all text. And I think that's honestly the problem with bad eggs. It's a bad monster. And the best monsters that we have in Buffy are monsters that represent something. They represent an emotional situation, or they represent some kind of, greater context that we're talking about. Or, in the case of some of the vampires, they're cool and they're fun. Like Tector and Lyle, I really quite enjoyed. I thought they were kind of fun. They're probably my favorite part of this whole, not to give away the ending of the episode. But,
jumping ahead to the end of the episode
to what's your favorite part, so I don't have to talk about this. Bye. It was fun. So I think that we get our best monsters when we have that kind of greater story going on. Like Some Assembly Required was about loneliness and grief. Reptile Boy was the demon lizard patriarchy. Hat tip to Buffy and the Vampire Slayer for naming that. Halloween was about our fantasy selves versus our real selves. So there's a lot of stuff that in the monsters, when the monsters are good, they're talking about something that has a greater meaning, has something bigger going on. And in this episode, we're talking about the mama bezoar with all the little baby bezoars that are like taking people over and being parasitic and whatever. And then we have this constant refrain of Joyce complaining about Buffy being irresponsible. So there is like, I think a potential for there to be like a kind of a parent-child, sort of reflection in that. But it's a parasite demon. All of it seems to be a biological imperative with no real value judgments one way or the other. If the mama bezoar was complaining about her kids and we were making a connection between the mama bezoar and Joyce, then maybe, there might be something to that. If we had Joyce, say, complaining to the mama bezoar about how hard it is to be a single parent, and the mama bezoar is like, bitch, please, you have one kid, I have 8,000. And I have to find a clever way to get them out there, to take over the world. Like this is difficult. Try living my life. I'm like undulating underneath a cement floor. Like this is my life.
Do you know how uncomfortable that is? I mean, really.
Any idea how difficult it is to have a high school, to deliberately make a high school get built on top of you? That takes so much coordination. You got to get the permits. Like that's difficult.
Yeah, and I mean. It feels like there's kind of the beginning of a theme with the whole like sex ed and pregnancy, and we've really upped the physical contact between Buffy and Angel and also Xander and Cordelia.
Sure.
We're making these connections between sex and reproduction and hormones. And we have Mr. Whitmore, who I guess is mind controlled at this point, but giving like the best sex ed class ever. Like he's so funny. He's so great. I love Mr. Whitmore.
Oh, yeah. So you thought that was great, like opening up with S-E-X.
Well, I thought it was great from the potential for a ridiculous kind of metaphor for, teenagers and hormones and, all of the feelings. But then there's maybe going to be pregnancy, but they don't really do pregnancy on Buffy ever.
No,
but then then we're joking about Buffy being a single mother and she's doomed to live her mother's life, she says. But there's no payoff for any of that.
No, and the thing is, the stuff with Joyce, I mean, Joyce is
good
basically
Lord.
just a conflict delivery machine at this point. She's like a vending machine. You put a quarter in and you get some bitchy comment,
Oh, God.
just to make
Joyce.
Buffy's life difficult. And the thing is that, like, I would sympathize with Joyce. Like, I am a single mother. Like, I know what that's like. And I know that it's really, really hard and it's exhausting, And, like, I get she doesn't know that Buffy's saving the world, so all she sees is irresponsibility. But there's such a great opportunity to have a real conversation between Buffy and Joyce where they actually, like, at the end of this episode, actually see each other. But that's not a relationship that we're developing. We're just using Joyce as a conflict vending machine. And that basically shuts down her character. And we have this awful moment with her and Giles where she's coming in and saying, well, I don't want to say she's a burden, but yeah, she's a burden. And I'm like,
Yeah. Joyce
First of all, I understand. I know how it's hard to be a mom. And sometimes it does feel like it's just too much and you just want a vacation from it. Like, I get it. And I also understand that I have been, like, incredibly lucky in my kids. My kids happen to be people that I would like anyway, that I would enjoy as people anyway. Not every parent gets that. Like, sometimes, and it's not necessarily through any fault of your own. It's kind of a crapshoot. And sometimes you give birth to an asshole. It happens, right? So I understand, like, it's really difficult and everything. But this idea of Giles is not Joyce's person. Right? Giles is Buffy's person. And so the lack of loyalty to Buffy to go to Giles and complain about Buffy, and then put Giles in that position. Of course, Giles is mind controlled at the moment. He'll never remember, so it doesn't really matter in the long run. But, we don't know that in that moment. And to put Giles in the position of having to sympathize with her while she's complaining about basically the person that is his friend. Like, he's closer with Buffy. He doesn't even know Joyce at this point, So all of it to me it doesn't feel like Joyce is a character. It feels like she's just there to make Buffy's life harder and to not understand Buffy. And if at the end of this, where we've got this Mama Bazor and all these babies, and then had we told a story about that and then ended on Joyce and Buffy's relationship being somewhat mended and having a greater understanding for each other and a greater sympathy for each other, I think that could have been okay. But we just kind of like, we it's like we're driving real fast past all these great places and we stop at the crappiest dive bar. I'm just like, this is good enough. We don't have to go to a nice place.
Yeah, this is fine.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the interaction with... So we open with Buffy and Joyce at the mall, and they're having that discussion about clothing. And, oh, God, Joyce uses the word streetwalker to describe the outfit Buffy tried on. And, I mean, come on, Joyce. Come on. Really? I mean, such a bummer.
You know what? How is your child ever going to learn how to slut shame if you don't start doing it young? Right? It's all about those value judgments, man. Got to get that in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and they have a little back and forth with, Joyce's dress from, what is it? Everyday Woman, which is...
Everyday Woman.
Such a
otherwise
great
known
name.
as the store for the woman who has given up.
Yes. Yeah. It's so good. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
But then they have this moment when Joyce has gotten food and Buffy meets her at the food court. And Buffy, of course, has been fighting vampires, so she didn't pick up the dress. And Joyce is so angry with her and says, don't you ever think about anything besides clothes and boys? And Buffy says, saving the world from vampires?
Right.
And if you are a queer person, or I mean, even if you're not, I guess, you know this moment. You've done this thing where you have something about yourself, about your life that you really want to tell people.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to tell people the truth about who you are. And you're sort of testing the waters. Like, how is this going to go over?
Right.
Like, if I drop this bomb, how is this going to land? And so there was a great opportunity here to do a sort of a coming out story, or kind of the beginnings of that coming out story. And they just didn't go anywhere with it. There's so much in this episode that just goes nowhere.
No, it's all a bunch of stuff that gets left on the floor. It's like, all of this stuff that could be great if stitched together properly. And they're like, nah, I'm just going to put that there and leave it. I'm not going to do anything with it.
Yeah. And I mean, and we even get some cute Joyce too, with like, what's the matter? Your egg keep you up all night? I thought that was great. Like, that was a great little bit of a mom dig. Like,
Sure.
like, it's not, like, really, you think an egg is gonna be a good representation for what it's like to have a baby?
Right.
I don't know. Did you ever do the you have to take care of something?
No, I never did that at my school. Although when I've talked about bad eggs before, a lot of people said, yes, they had to do the egg thing in school. And I know there are some schools that have like these mechanical babies. I think in Veronica Mars, they had a mechanical baby that would cry and like, and so all of that stuff is just, it's something that my school never did. They never acknowledged it. We had a little bit of sex education, and they were like, no, that's fine. Just go out and get pregnant. It's easier than talking to you guys about this, So, like, we never really had that at my school. And it's funny. Did you have that? Did you have to take care of something?
No, we never had to take care of anything. I know some of my peers did a bag of flour that they had to carry around.
I heard about that, too. And Niles does that in an episode of Frasier, where he's trying to decide if he wants a baby, so he straps a bag of flour to his chest.
Oh, my God.
Oh, can we talk about Frasier instead?
Yes. Oh, my gosh. I have seen all of Frasier, I think, all the way through once.
Oh, I've seen it like 5 times. I love Frasier. We will talk about that the next episode, or the next podcast. After we finish Buffy will be, what was it? Still Snooty. That'll be Frasier. Yeah.
God. Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, it's a missed opportunity. Here we have these seemingly reflective parenting stories, but we're not really getting anything out of it. It's not really going anywhere. And so we're just kind of left with this conflict between Joyce and Buffy, and then we've got all the smooching, right? We've got
much
Xander
making
Cordelia.
out.
Xander
Much
and
making
Cordelia,
out.
Making out all the time. We've got Buffy and Angel making out all the time. And then we get that nice moment with Buffy and Angel where she's talking about, I don't want to have a kid now, but someday maybe, and he's like, well, I can't do that. And she's just like, okay, whatever, And then he's like, you never think about the future. So I'm like, she's 16. Of course she doesn't think about the future.
Except that like 2 episodes ago, wasn't it Career Day? And we were thinking about how she's not going to have a future. Which,
if anything, is going to dissuade you from thinking about the future. The fact that you likely don't have one, I think, is probably a good reason not to think about it,
Yeah. So much making out. All the making out. And then, of course, we have Xander and Cordelia. Mm-hmm. And I know I said a couple episodes ago that Xander and Cordelia don't do it for me. Here, it totally works.
Oh,
Here,
I love them.
I love it. I love it. And I think it's partly because Xander's Xanderiness is nicely offset by Cordelia, because so much of Xander's grossness is directed at Cordelia, but she serves it right back to him.
She calls him on it. Yeah,
not
absolutely.
Care. She does not. She is completely not ruffled by any of that. And then it's Xander who gets his feelings hurt because she doesn't want to look at his Xander face in the closet. And he's so pouty and mean about it. And I don't know. In this episode, they totally work for me.
Well, it's a fun, like the slap kiss thing, the opposites attract, the two people who hate each other but they can't help it, can be fun for a little while. So I mean, there's a reason why this is kind of classic,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like Xander, it wasn't too bad. There was the one thing he said where, how about having to feign interest in her vapid chit chat just so you can get some touch? And I'm like, oh my God, you're disgusting.
Yeah.
You're disgusting. And meanwhile, Cordelia is so adorable when they're talking about sex in the class, and he's like, what are the dangers of sex? And she goes, well, not for me, a friend, but was making out with this guy in a Miata.
Do you mean sex in the car or out of the car?
It was so funny.
So good. So good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so excellent. But I mean, I don't know. And I love her little, we should go check the closets to see if Mr. Whitmore falls out of the closet. It's just like not subtle at all.
And the only one who picks up on it, of course, is Willow. And the thing is, I would think that Willow, I mean, I guess maybe because they've known and hated Cordelia for so long that it just doesn't occur to her that the two of them are making out, but she picks up on it. She's like, are they getting weirder? Have you noticed the weirdness of them?
Yes.
So Willow picks up on it. Everybody else is like, whatever, they're just fighting. They're always fighting,
But it's very, it's just not, there's not a lot of there. There's not a lot.
No, there really isn't. And it's kind of disappointing, and it's also like incredibly gross. Like the egg monster, the point where it plugs its tentacles into the various orifices in Buffy's face.
No, I don't want to, it's, no, like it's long shoot that comes out and then it's got a little like tentacly eggy hand and I'm done.
No, it's really gross, and then of course Buffy stabs it with the scissors.
Yeah,
which I think is really cool.
First, she chases it around with an iron, which I think is great.
Which is really great. She's resourceful. She's using what she has on hand, and it reminds me a little bit of the black creepy crawlers that the mayor eats in season 3 when he's got that box full of them, and Buffy throws Faith's knife into it. Yeah. So it's just like it has a similarity in movement and design, I think. So they may have actually reused them. Who knows?
Shout to the puppeteers for this episode, because that's all. Those tentacles are all practical effects. It looks like.
Yeah, and it looks. I mean, as far as practical effects go, I think it looks pretty good. It's gross.
Yeah, it's super gross. It's super gross. The tentacle monster thing crawling on her while she's sleeping is just
right. But, okay, now here's some stupid questions, because who really cares? Obviously, this is not meant to like for deep, introspection. But so how does the egg make its shell whole again the next morning after crawling out and connecting itself to Buffy? Also, why does it have to why does it have to wait? It's out of its shell. It's, connecting in with her. Obviously, one of these things doesn't have to familiarize itself with its host, because Giles is able to just throw a random one on Joyce in a minute and she's totally under control. So we have this thing where it's interrupting their sleep and it's, poking at them in the night and all this kind of stuff. And yet, why not just take over Buffy then?
Yeah, it makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And when Buffy calls Willow and we find out that Willow is, we learn that Willow is under bizarre
mind
control.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But before we know that, Willow just seems like sleepy Willow, because of course it's 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
My egg is fine. I put it in the fridge. It's just, she's just Willow. It's weird to me that we're doing a mind control thing where sometimes they're zombies marching to the poor man's Carmina Burana.
Right.
And sometimes they're like when Giles throws the thing on Joyce, he's totally himself until he does that. He's totally Giles,
Right.
just kind of
Yeah.
like being sort of like, oh, haha, children, so funny,
Yes.
you know, so challenging. I don't have any myself, but I have all of these children. Like he's just Giles.
Yeah.
He enters that scene with his little like Scooby-Doo head poke around the outside of the library cage, and it's delightful. And he's just Giles, but
Right.
then suddenly he's a bizarre zombie. Like I don't understand what's going on.
They can
I don't
pretend
understand
to be
what-
they've got the personality of the person, but
Yeah.
they're controlling it's just like it's weird. It's not supposed to make nobody cares whether this makes sense or not. Like,
It doesn't
we're
make
at a
sense.
point
Like,
where we're like, we have 45 minutes, we delivered 45 minutes, what more do you people want
what
from
do you
us?
want from us?
Right?
What do you want from us?
But the thing is, though, this is Marty Noxon, and Marty Noxon is serious business. Like she's a fantastic writer. And this was early on. I think she did What's My Line? I think part 2,
Yeah,
or part 1. I
yeah,
can't
she
remember.
co-wrote part 1, and then
Yeah.
she's the sole credited writer on part 2.
Yeah. So she's she's got a little bit of experience, but it may just be that she got a dud. She didn't know what to do with it. Because this is kind of a duddy. And this is also one of those episodes, too, that we're just killing time until we get to next week's episodes, which are the ones that we're actually going to put the energy into, because that's the big, like, emotional torment of the season, is
Yes.
what happens next week, which we spoil. I spoil everything, but now I'm being cagey. Why? Because Angel turns into a vampire. That's, they have
What?
sex, it's the curse,
No.
blah, blah, blah. I know. Sometimes I forget that this is fully spoiled, and I start being all, like, delicate about it.
Yeah,
and
you're
I'm
like,
wait a
well,
minute,
and then
everybody knows.
some things happen, and some characters change who they are,
Certain
and
things happen.
exactly.
Yes, that we won't talk about because wah. But I'm happy to talk about it now because I got nothing to say about bad eggs.
we got nothing. Yeah, we got. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
all right, we have. There's a tiny little bit of characterization that I absolutely love.
Okay.
That jumping all the way to the end, because why the hell not, is my
Why the
favorite
hell not?
part.
Yeah.
When Willow hands Buffy her egg.
Yeah.
And, Buffy has that great line about as punishments go, it's kind of abstract. But then Willow says, no, it's your baby. And the way she says baby, like Willow is so uncomfortable in sex ed class. But then as soon as the subject of like pregnancy, she's the one who
Right.
volunteers that pregnancy may be an unwanted side effect of sexual behavior. But then once Mr. Whitmore is like, come collect your offspring, she is stoked. Willow's got her little egg carrier basket all ready to go. She is so excited to be Mama Willow. It's so great. And the way she says baby, I'm just like,
Baby.
it's your baby. I'm like, and this is not a side of Willow that we have seen. We haven't seen maternal
We
Willow.
haven't seen the nurturing,
She
But I think
wants
we
to have a
I
baby.
think she's a little bit like that, though, with Xander. She kind of does nurture him like a kid sometimes,
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
of
and
course,
I know
part of that comes from his actually being, really immature.
Yeah.
so.
Well, and I think we see it later on with Willow in little ways, the way she is so very pleased to help out when somebody needs, tutoring or coaching or understanding. Willow is there.
Right.
Willow is there for you. But the Willow wanting to have a baby thing is just so dear to me.
I know it is. It's very sweet. It's
Yeah.
very sweet, Willow. The whole thing is just. But I could talk about something I love, though.
What do you love?
Lyle and Tector.
Oh my God,
Lyle
yes.
and
We
Tector
have
are really fun.
Vampire Cowboys.
Vampire
which
Cowboy Brothers
is so great and so much fun. And where is the spin-off television show about vampire cowboys? Because I want
Vampire Cowboy Brothers. I love, we have this scene where they're in the sewer, and this is a nothing scene. This is a scene that has nothing to do with the story, really. It's just thrown in, right? But we have them, and Tector has such, when Lyle's like, I should have just left you on the doorstep when her mother died.
sad.
And that's one of the things, too, is that, when Giles talks about their history, they're like, well, they came to fame, massacring a town. And they were like, oh, great. And it's like, that was before they were vampires. These guys were never any good, And so they have that whole thing. And Tector's vulnerability when Lyle says that to him is so
Yeah.
great. His feelings are like genuinely hurt, you know, and they just like, they're so goofy and they're so fun. And I really do enjoy them in this episode. Now we're going to see Lyle again. He's going to come back after the Slayer for Slayer Fest 98 in Homecoming in season 3. So it's going to be fun to see him again, but it's never the same without Tector. Because of that vulnerability of this, is they've been together this whole time. And then when Tector gets eaten by the Mama Bazour, I mean, we have a moment and Lyle's like mad.
Yeah.
And it probably wouldn't be like where you want the story to go, because it's not Tector's story. We really don't care about Lyle and Tector and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, like, I kind of wanted to see him have a moment of heartache there and be really upset about it. He's like, he's mad. And then he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to kill me a Slayer and move on, you know, which I guess is vampire. But like, we have seen that there is vampire love and affection, and you know, so we know that that's a thing, and these two are obviously deeply bonded, you know. So I don't know, like, it's not where we're going. I understand why they didn't do it, but like, that honestly, Out of Bad Eggs was the thing that interested me most, was Lyle and Tector and their relationship.
I love them so much. I love them punching each other for fun. Like, that is what they do as vampire brothers, that they get it. Like, they just take turns punching each other. And there's something so perfect about that.
Yes. I mean, they're a couple of dim bulbs.
Yeah.
They're not the sharpest, crayons in the box. Like, you can go to that all you want. And usually I don't like stupid characters, but these two I kind of love, and I think it is because of that deep bonding, because of that vulnerability, because of that love. Vampires who love each other, be it a romantic relationship or a family relationship or whatever, that always kind of intrigues me, because it complicates so much our idea of what vampires are and what they can be. And the closer we get them to humanity, I think the more complicated. I mean, obviously they're evil and they're killing people and they need to be stopped and all that kind of stuff. But I like that it takes that simplicity of they're just evil. It's like they're evil, but they're also like feeling beings who love, and I like that. I thought that was really fun, and I loved the way they had Tector's vulnerability in there. It really made them a lot of fun, and those scenes were honestly the stuff that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, and we're starting to see a little bit more variety in our vampires. They're not just monsters. They are.
We're getting personality.
They have personality, and they obviously retain something of the person that they were. I mean, Giles tells us way early that, this is not the person. This is, a demon in a person suit. And it's, I mean, of course he doesn't say it that way, but, like that.
But basically that's it. Yeah.
That basically that's what it is, that it has the memories of the person, but it's not the person. But I don't know. It really seems to me like the vampires are a sort of heightened version of who they were as people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, are vampires a human that has had something taken away, like the soul, right? Or like a human that's had something added in, I mean, obviously they say they don't have a soul, so that takes away that sense of right and wrong or whatever it is. I mean, what the soul actually does is up for huge debate. We have much textual evidence, most of it contradictory. So it doesn't really, we're not really sure exactly what the soul does, because if souls made you good, then we wouldn't have bad humans. But a vampire with a soul has the ability to feel empathy and guilt. And maybe that's what the soul does. And if empathy and guilt is the only thing that makes us not be completely horrible and kill each other and heartless. So like it's a very complicated question of what exactly it does, and then what is added in. It's not just that the soul is taken out, but like the demon is added in. So you also become that demon that is just all about what? All about evil? Like that's it?
Yeah.
Like, so I think it's really complicated. It's really interesting to me. And I can never, like, every bit of textual evidence that you get about what the vampire is, what the soul does, what the role of it is. It's all contradictory. It's all weird and it's all complicated, but I kind of love it that way. I love that you can't ever really nail it down. It almost seems like it's a different thing for every person.
It really does. It really does, because if we try to make rules for vampires in this world, there's always going to be a vampire who doesn't follow those rules.
Yeah.
And they don't follow the rules usually for story reasons because it's, you know, it's much more interesting if, you know, if we change how vampires work, or we change how Angel works, or how Spike works. We'd have so much fun with Spike. Can we just talk about Spike? I know he's not in this episode, but like, let's talk about Spike and vampires, because like everything that goes down with Spike is so like, it just blows the lid off the whole, you know, vampires are easily contained in this checklist of things that.
Right.
So I don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't even know. That's a big
That's
old
an interesting conversation we're going to be having a lot of, especially as we move into season 4 and we get Spike with a chip.
Yes.
You know, which is like a, you know, a mechanical, electrical soul. Like it just, rather than making him feel guilty and feel bad, it just delivers a hell of a headache. And yeah, I don't know. It's so interesting what that does to Spike. It puts him in this like nowhere space between being a vampire. He can't be a vampire, can't be a human, you know, stuck in this place. And I think that is really interesting. I think Spike, because he allows us to explore the fringe cases of what it is to be a vampire, you know, he is probably the one who provides most of the contradictory evidence for everything.
Yeah.
Because you put him in a situation and it's always a little bit different. And, you know, and you wonder, like, is there some of the soul that gets retained if the person has a very strong, you know, sense of love and compassion and all those soul-y things? Like, is that something that gets like carried over, kind of like when you cook with garlic and then there's garlic in everything?
Yes.
Like, you know,
yeah, there you go.
I don't know. Is Spike a garlicky vampire? Which I realize now, as I say it, is a weird way to express because of garlic and vampires. But anyway, long story short, Bad Eggs is not a great episode.
It's not. It's really not.
And yeah. And you know, it's kind of disappointing because usually we can pull stuff. And I thought maybe all the stuff in the closet. I was like, oh, Noelle's gonna have some great queer theory on this, and then I'm like, I'm not sure there's anything to pull out from that.
I don't really have a lot of stuff about being in the closet. I mean, with the exception of that sort of missed opportunity at the beginning, to really make this, to focus on the friction between Buffy and Joyce over, I want to tell her, because Joyce is misunderstanding Buffy because Joyce doesn't have all the information. Joyce is just trying to make sense of what she sees in Buffy and what she knows about Buffy. And she's making some guesses based on past behavior, but she has no idea what's going on. So, you know, and then of course it's a huge amount of pressure on Buffy to be keeping this secret. So some sort of friction over, you know, I want to tell her, but I'm not sure. But what if she doesn't, you know, she's not going to understand. Well, you can't, you know, well, obviously she can't understand if you don't tell her. So how do you, you know, there's a whole different narrative there that they didn't do. And then all of this, you know, all of the stuff with our characters being in the closet. I mean, we could be talking about being closeted. I mean, I think it's funny that Xander and Cordelia are taking their sexual behavior to the closet.
Right. Yeah.
That they're being closeted about their sexuality. But of course it's a apparently heterosexual relationship. I don't know.
Well, right. I mean, because the closet is always associated with, you know, like being some variation on the spectrum, LGBTQ plus, whatever, that there's something about yourself that you can't tell people because they won't understand or whatever, so you hide it, and so we've got like the closet being used as a metaphor, but it's not a metaphor. The subtext is rapidly becoming text. It's just anybody who is hiding something, and of course they're literally hiding in the closet, so that nobody sees them kissing each other. We've got Buffy in the closet with her vampire thing, and I think that you could have done something with that because it is sitting right there. But instead, it's just nothing. You don't do anything with it. Like nothing's done with that idea of hidden identities, of hiding a part of yourself. Although I guess all the people who are taken over trying to hide their mind controlled status, but there's nothing. Like you really can't pull anything out of it.
There's not. And the mind control is not consistent in the way it works. I mean, by the end, they're just automatons. They're just, really ineffectively using those pickaxes that they got from the Sunnydale High School pickaxe repository. Did your high school have what? What?
Oh, every high school has that. They're kept right next to the archery set. You didn't notice that in high school? Yeah.
Oh, and the abandoned science lab. Like, that's the other one that every high school has.
Yeah.
The old science lab in which we can make our Frankenstein's monster. Anyway.
It's just, it's so crazy. It's just so crazy. So, okay, for this episode, I really don't have anything else except for, of course, hashtag Sunnydale So White.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, shout out to activist April Rain of Oscars So White. Yes. Oh, God. Yeah.
It's just, okay, we have, I think 3 people of color show up this week. So it is a banner week. For Buffy, as far as just having any representation is all. But we have, we've got this janitor, who is a black man, immediately gets jumped and thrown into a hole. And of course, we presume killed, but apparently just taken over and used, we have one black student, right? And then Cordelia runs over to her and says, "Is that your real hair?" And I was like, if she touches her hair, I swear to God. And I was watching in the background and she didn't. So at least there was that.
This is so not okay. Like that, that ripped me so far out of this already terrible episode. I was just like, no. I mean, the entitlement of white women to black women's bodies and the expectation of an answer specifically around hair and no, so bad.
And the thing is, if we were trying to say something about that by using Cordelia as an example of that kind of entitlement, but it wasn't, it was just a background joke.
Yes. And just ends. It just ends with Shanice smiling at Cordelia like nothing's wrong. And I'm just like, no, we needed to.
Which I think a lot of people do, because what are you going to do? You just sit there and you smile and you deal with it and then you walk away and roll your eyes. So I think it's fairly accurate of the situation that poor Shanice was probably in on a regular basis. But we're not. But the thing is, because it's background, because we're not really. We're trying. I think what they're trying to do here is to display Cordelia's kind of shallow affect that she just doesn't care about anything that's going on, and she just wants to talk about hair.
Yeah.
And is that your real hair is like a funny line for Cordelia to say to anybody, but the fact that they put, a black character in that role with her means that we are bringing in a wider context that we're not then addressing in any way. And it's highly, highly uncomfortable.
It's intensely problematic, and it's not unpacked at all. I mean, if they wanted to do something, make this a character moment for Cordelia or whatever to, show.
Or have her say literally anything else.
Yeah, right?
Literally anything else.
Yeah.
Where do you get your nails done? Anything.
Yeah.
Talk to her about anything. But like white women and black women's hair, it's just
so bad. It's so not okay. It's not okay.
I know.
It's not.
I know.
It's such a.
And then we have one more person of color who is behind Cordelia in line, and of course gets immediately slammed into the wall. Attacks Xander, and Xander slams him into the wall. And it's just, I'm glad people are getting work. Like, I always want everybody to get work, and I think that that's great. But it just, after a while, it's like, okay, like, and At the time, they weren't aware, they didn't know, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to say that all these people are racist and terrible. I'm just saying this is us. This is reflecting us back at us, because the fact that this stuff happened and it wasn't a second thought, nobody had any awareness of it, that reflects us back at us. And I think it's important to look at hashtag Sunnydale So White, you know, when we come across this, just because like that's the stuff that we need to be aware of, that we do without even thinking about it. And by we, I mean white people.
Yeah. Well, and white women specifically, because
white women specifically.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer as a show is pretty good about elevating white women. I mean, we get a lot of time and attention devoted to, well, Buffy especially, and her feelings, and her pain gets taken very seriously.
Yep.
That's something that, I mean, and that is important, because diminishing women's pain is one of the many things that the patriarchy likes to do. But of course, there's this long, long history of elevating white women at the expense of all other women. Pretty much.
Right. I mean, it's classic white feminism.
That's what, and that's what white feminism is. I mean, it's you know,
it's feminism that only cares about white women's issues.
And, you know, continues to uphold white supremacy.
Yes.
So we do.
Yes.
It is interesting.
It only addresses the things that are inconvenient to white women.
Right.
Yes.
It's interesting to look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer as a show, as a text, a cultural text that is upheld as being very feminist and progressive. Certainly.
Although there are issues with that too. I mean, it's kind of feminist.
Yeah.
It's like mostly feminist.
It's complicated.
In a lot of ways, it's not.
Yeah, it's complicated in its feminism. And I mean, and that's something that I feel like we are discussing and continuing to discuss here. But it is very, very white feminist in its feminism. I also think that a lot of the feminism of the show is accidental.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Do you have a little rap for this, or do you want me to do mine?
Oh, no, you do yours. I think I did mine, you know, at some point already. So I want to hear yours.
Mine is just, I think that what gets called feminist in the show quite often, certainly early on, is was not an attempt at creating a feminist storyline. It was an attempt to be different and interesting.
Yeah, to subvert the horror storyline where the blonde gets killed.
Yeah.
Right.
And then critics said, oh, this is feminist. And Joss Whedon said, yeah, totally it is.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm a great feminist.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
my mom. That's what.
Yeah. And it's just not that, no, like that's not how that works.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I see anyway. And I can't speak for what is or is not in Joss Whedon's heart. I can just say that from an external perspective, based on a lot of what we get actually within the text of Buffy, that feminism was something ascribed to it more than aspired to from within it. And so I don't really see it. I see it as having a complicated feminism. There are definitely some things that are highly, you know, feminist within Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But it doesn't quite understand, I think, all the issues that it raises. And it also is a huge, huge proponent of, you know, the patriarchy, basically. So we've got a lot of that going on too, without question. So I think that overall, like all of us, Buffy is complicated. Buffy learns as it goes. Buffy makes mistakes. You know, there's still great stuff within Buffy. And I don't mean to take away from what it does or what it has. You know, I think that it's just an important conversation to be having about it, because if you ascribe Buffy, you know, this status as the ultimate in feminism, you're misrepresenting really what feminism should be and what it's about and how complicated it can be. So So I don't want to get in this space where it's like a constant refrain of accusations of, bad feminism or, like racism and like all of this stuff. It's not the fault of Buffy. It's the fault of the culture in which we live that Buffy is reflecting back at us. So when I'm critiquing that, I don't really feel like getting into this whole accusation space about Joss Whedon or about any of the people who write this stuff or any of that, because all of us who have been raised within this culture, it is just reflecting us back at us. Mm-hmm. So when I see it, I am critical of things that I didn't see, that I didn't question. There are still things. You bring up stuff to me every week that I just like, I don't know, honestly, and I'm doing my best, but I don't always get it.
Oh, wait till we get to Vampire Willow.
Right. And I'm sure that I've written stuff in my books that is equally as stupid and thoughtless, and I didn't mean to, but it's there because it's the culture reflected through its art. And so it's important that when we're talking about this, everybody understand I'm not necessarily criticizing the art itself. I'm criticizing the culture. There will be times where I criticize the art. Like, for instance, Bad Eggs, but overall it's just important that we take a look at the culture being reflected back at us and make sure we question these things, because it makes it easier to see it when it comes at us in real time, in real life now.
Yeah.
And that's a skill set that I think we all need to build up. I think probably me more than most. I'm trying, but stuff gets past me all the time. I'm like Lucy at the chocolate factory. Like, I catch a couple of them. I stuff a couple of them in my bra, but the rest just go right past me. I'm like, so I do my best. And I think that everybody working on Buffy did their best.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like make it an accusatory thing, but yet I think it's important that we talk about it.
Right. It's important that we talk about it. And also that in being critical of it, we're not diminishing the ways in which people did see themselves represented finally in this show,
right.
Because that is something that certainly as we move through the seasons and we see more character development from really everybody, but there are a lot of experiences represented on Buffy that I think didn't get a lot of attention in other places at the time. So for many of us, it was the first real conversation that we got to have with a piece of pop culture about relationships or gender and sexuality or, big emotions related to growing up and responsibility and owning power and what that all, how that all looks and feels for people having different experiences. So that's, so that's a component of it as well, that it's not, it's never, nothing is ever just one thing.
Yes.
It's never just one thing.
So, so we appreciate the complications. We appreciate, the different elements that contribute to all of these things. We're not slamming anybody. We're not calling anybody bad people. We're not like, it's not about condemnation. It's about examination. And that's just what we have to do.
Except for Joyce, because what the hell, Joyce? I mean, come on.
No, Joyce, that's not Joyce's fault.
No, it's not.
Joyce is not a character. Like, if she was actually a character, then I would have a conversation. And when we get to Surprise and Innocence next week, we are going to have a conversation about Joyce because Jesus. But, yeah, there's some bad stuff there. You thought the Streetwalker thing was bad. Oh, my God. But we'll talk about that next week. But yeah, I mean, like, Joyce is just not, she's not a character. She's a conflict vending machine. And when that's happening, there's just nothing you can do. You can't talk about it because there's nothing there. It's just, we're just using this character to deliver some conflict for our main character. And they're just there to reflect the main character back at themselves and create problems. And, I mean, whatever. It's fine. Bad Eggs is, whatever. We have Willow going to teach the dreidel song to her egg, so I like that.
Yeah, Willow is Jewish.
Hooray! Is Jewish.
That's lovely. And it's borderline offensive, Xander saying, and teach it that dreidel song as a counterpoint to good Christian values. But to give Xander every benefit of the doubt, I think that for most high schoolers in 1998. That was the understanding.
That's what you know about Jewish culture. Although she's his best friend.
Yeah.
So, he grew up. But, like, as we find out with Willow's life is that I think she's, like, ethnically Jewish, but I don't think they are practicing, like, the religious aspect of Judaism very much in her household. It does not seem to be that way. So we never really, like, discuss Judaism or have any representation of real Judaism, on the show. It's nice that Willow is Jewish and that we have her as part of the main crew. But it's not like that's a huge, strike of representation for Judaism.
Right.
So it's a shame, but because it would have been nice.
Yeah,
it would have been nice to have her practicing, and then to see how that blends with her embracing of, like, Wicca later, when we talk about Wicca as a,
Jewish
as a religion.
witch. And we complicate, I mean, religion in Sunnydale is super complicated, and we mix up Wicca, the religion, with witchcraft, the practice, and oh man.
It's all a big mess, but you know what? We'll get to that when we get to it. So, Noelle,
Yes.
what are you wearing this week?
Oh my goodness. Well,
yeah, I don't know. The only thing that I really picked up on was Willow's weird shirt, where because it's a tough call, right? If you're a parasitic demon attaching yourself to someone's spinal column, right? Do you make them wear a longer shirt to cover up what's really going on, or one that is oddly folded up at the back so you can get some fresh air, and also so that the camera can see you, right? It was such a weird shirt for Willow, to have that, like, gaping spot at the base of her spine. And so that was all I got from the costumes this week. That was the only thing that, like, stood out to me, aside from Cordelia's backpack, her bear.
Oh my God.
Build a Bear Workshop backpack.
That backpack. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There are some nice tiny backpacks this week. I remember when tiny backpacks were the height of fashion.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, nothing really leapt out at me. I mean, other than that bear backpack, except the girl at the very beginning, the unnamed girl at the mall that Lyle is gonna bite, is wearing white tights, which always looks like a uniform to me. I always decide that somebody wearing white stockings is in uniform.
Goes to a private school,
or
right?
something.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yes.
I was confused about that whole situation, though, because I watched the episode a couple times, and the first time I didn't catch that it's the mirror that Buffy's looking in that shows her that Lyle is a vampire. I don't know. It's
right. Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's
all weird.
I'm down with cowboy vampires, though.
Yeah, no.
Cowboy hats on vampires. I'm here for it.
Works for me. I like a little cultural flavor, historical flavor in my vampires. It's kind of fun. All right, so for the patriarchy, for this week's moment in patriarchy, what do you got?
This week in the patriarchy.
Right.
I mean, oh gosh, Xander's kind of yucky, but Cordelia gives it right back to him.
Slaps him down, and he's textually acknowledged as gross.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And
at least you get that.
The Gorch brothers are gross, but they're supposed to be. I mean, sugar lips.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, if it's acknowledged in the text that it's not okay, then I got no problem.
They're gross.
Like, I don't need everybody to be perfect. That would be boring. But when it's acknowledged that it's not a good thing, so I think we're actually doing okay on our patriarchy scale this week. We're at a real low hum on the patriarchy scale. So girl power. What do you got for girl power? You okay?
Oh yeah, just the idea of the low hum of the patriarchy. Just it's like constant. It's like, is something on? Do you hear that?
Right.
Do you hear? It's
right.
Like the TV.
No, that's exactly what the patriarchy is. It's that air conditioning sound in the background that you don't hear until all of a sudden you hear it. And you're like, wait, has that been on the whole time?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it's the low evil hum of the patriarchy.
Oh, man.
All right, so what you got for your girl power moment?
Girl power. I love Buffy going after the baby critter with the iron and then stabbing it with the fabric scissors. That feels very like, I'm going to take
killing evil,
domesticity,
mundane household things. Yes,
I'm going to take domesticity and I'm going to use it to kill evil. There you go. I'm going to smash the bizarre patriarchy, except it's the matriarchy.
It is a matriarchy. It's a mama.
I don't know about this. I think that is some serious internalized misogyny on the part of the show. I think
they're not giving power to the mama.
This is a narrative about single motherhood and how difficult it is, and Buffy is just like smashing.
Bitch, I got 185 children. Yes. Don't even complain to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
A bizarre, by the way, that's a real word. It's a stone that forms in the stomach of ruminants, I learned. So there you go. Why?
Well, they had them in Harry Potter, didn't they? Didn't they have like a bizarre thing that they had to swallow or something?
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe I'm mixing it up with something else.
I don't know.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
It's
like we find magical sounding word and we just throw it at the script.
Just throw it in there because whatever.
Fine.
Right?
Yep.
You know. I liked Buffy diving in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
After Tector had been eaten by this thing, dives in, beats the hell out of this Bazoar. First of all, the Bazoar is physically like covering up the whole. Where does she dive inside?
Yeah.
The Bazoar, like, how does she? And then she just hacks her way out with a pickaxe and then comes out when she pulls herself out covered in this Bazoar tar. Right.
Yes.
And then my favorite moment, I think, which, you know, again, is Lyle when he's like the whole thing. He's like, this ain't over. This ain't over. This ain't over. So this lovely 3-beat. This ain't over. This ain't over. And then finally, when she comes out covered in tar, having killed the thing that just killed his brother, he was like, all right, it's over.
Yep. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So all right. So I just kind of stepped on the next thing, which is our favorite part. That is my favorite part. What is your favorite part?
My favorite part is Mama Willow. I love that bit of characterization for her, that she's excited about the idea of having a baby someday. The baby.
The baby. All right, that's it for today. To join in the discussion on Twitter, follow me at Lani Diane Rich and Noelle at Noelle Aloud, and use the hashtag StillPretty. You can also visit the Chipperish forums. Go to chipperish.com, click on the forum, and join in the fun.
Or you can keep Chipperish Media going to the tune of $1 a month or more and gain access to the live chat in Discord, where you can hang out with me and Lani and all the Chipperish patrons who do have a sort of Machiavellian ingenuity to their transgressions. Visit patreon.com/Chipperish to find out more.
You can also show your support by giving Still Pretty a great review on Apple Podcasts, or by telling your friends about the show, or by seeing their good and raising them a yeah.
We will be back next time with Surprise and Innocence, the 13th and 14th episode of Season 2. Until then, it's an egg. It doesn't emote.